Hi, my name is Dr. Alex Ma. I am a senior lecturer in the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology. I'm also the co-leader of the Chemistry I-PERSIST Peer Mentor Program. In the I-PERSIST program this past fall semester, we have approximately 45 peer mentors who met with 2 small groups of first-year students every week. Because of COVID, we had to modify how mentors were trained and how the mentoring program was conducted. In spite of these challenges, we were still able to connect and support our first-year students by using online platforms. We learned some new things on the way. We also made a difference. I'm going to ask some questions to some of our current mentors who participated in last fall's online mentoring program. Our first question is, how effective were virtual summer training and fall supervisor meetings? Shannon, do you have anything to offer?
This past semester was definitely helpful for a lot of the new mentors, especially because given COVID, we were trying to get used to, kind of all together, getting used to this virtual platform. So I think it was helpful in everyone learning how WebEx works and brainstorming different ideas of ways to present material to the mentees and how to run the mentoring sessions. I think a lot of the practicing and everything we did for like our first session and meeting with our mentees for the first time was really helpful. The big difference, I think, from being in person to online I know there was a lot more kind of, it was differing in the training because we would be in like big lectures and we'd have the opportunity to kind of talk amongst ourselves a lot more, which is not as easy with this virtual space. I know some of the training did utilize the breakout rooms, but definitely not as much as we usually would do in in-person training.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have that practice run through. I know in the in-person training, we used to have that last day to kind of practice what we would go up in front of the class and say to introduce ourselves, able to do one question on the board, to kind of become more comfortable in the classroom setting. And that was able to be done in the virtual format by practicing our introduction. I think we did that multiple times. I can't remember if we did go through kind of able to explain a question or kind of deal with the group in terms of asking chemistry questions, because I remember we would do that in person, but that would definitely be something to add, even if it's like basic chemistry questions, being able to explain those over the virtual platform, I think would be helpful for the new mentors.
Well, thank you, Shannon. As you know, Shannon was a senior. Share my screen again. The second question has to do with, did you like meeting your mentees virtually prior to the start of the semester? I know a lot of you had to do multiple try to get a hold of them during the summer because all you had was just an email. So let me unshare the screen.
Me. I'd say that it was definitely a nice jumping point. I don't think I heard from everyone, but it was definitely helpful for both myself and the mentees to get like acquainted with WebEx. So like being able to log on and start a meeting, and then for them to also like communicate through this platform. It was definitely helpful to have like a starter way to then, once we were getting into content, we were comfortable with what we were doing and talking. So like I could introduce myself first. And so then we could move forward and be productive in the semester.
The third question was the introduction of lecture mentors helpful to the students? I would like to hear from people that actually were lecture mentors, currently or in the past. So what about lecture mentoring? Isabella? Well, you already talked, Isabella. Let me find somebody else. How about Molly? Is Molly available, or she's still on the bus?
I'm good now. I'm off the bus.
Okay.
I'm on my computer now. Sorry about before. It was like on the shelf.
You were a fall lecture mentor, right?
Yeah, and I did it in the spring, like during the pandemic, like during the start of the pandemic.
Yeah, when we were just doing a pilot program. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
So
that
what do you think?
yeah, I think that lecture mentoring is really beneficial. In the spring initially, when that started, when I was lecture mentoring in the spring, I don't believe I continued when we moved completely online, or maybe I did. I can't remember. That's a long time ago, but I feel like
I was away, so I didn't push that. So
Yeah.
Dr. Morrissey probably didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it was Dr. Morrissey. So I don't believe we continued helping online, but I definitely like doing it better on WebEx rather than we used the other media site thing in the spring. And then in the fall, I think that lecture mentoring was helpful for some students because it's sometimes hard to get like the professor's attention when like, so I mean you were the person for me, but either when any of the professors are lecturing, like it's difficult for them to see the chat box. So I think that having the lecture mentors there to answer any questions is helpful. And I think it also makes it a little bit more interactive, like if you can send out questions and then like you can get answers. And then there's also just some students who like to just talk in the chat box, like ask me about my day and then I ask them about theirs. And I think that that's like a form of social interaction for them. And if it means that they'll come to class and pay attention and have that kind of like interaction, then I think it's like beneficial too.
Now, what in the fall? Can you tell us what it was like the first 2 weeks of being a lecture mentor?
So the very first day I was lecture mentor, and like the first few weeks into it, there were a lot of questions, just general questions about RPI, about the syllabus, about lab, just like tons of questions, all in the chat box. It was kind of overwhelming, I guess, like people ask a lot of things. But
Yeah.
definitely like as the semester went on, the questions focused less on like the syllabus type stuff or like grading, and then they started to ask me more questions about stuff that goes on during class and like different concepts and things like that.
Right. All right. The next question, I only have 5 questions, so okay. So please bear with me. What are some of the ways to improve cyber mentoring and mentor office hours? We talked a little bit about that during my introduction. So anybody give me a suggestion?
I didn't do mentoring, but just I guess I did like normal chem mentoring last semester with office hours. But I thought that this semester doing it like in the designated WebEx teams, it was better than like last semester because I think like I kind of replicated what it was actually like to go in person. Because like how when you go in person, there's like 4 mentors there, and then like everybody's kind of working together. So I felt like doing it in the WebEx teams this semester kind of like made it feel like more of like that community aspect that we usually have in person.
Oh, okay. What about from the first year mentor? Zoe, what do you think? You did them both, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think there was a lot more attendance in office hours, at least for me this semester. And it made it easier to like kind of break things up. So if there's like a lot of people coming, you can kind of like designate the breakout rooms. I really like the idea of the breakout rooms. So I think it was overall a much better experience with the office hours this semester.
Okay. What do you think it would happen if everything goes back in person? Can we incorporate part of that?
I think we definitely could. That would be useful for students that just can't make it for some reason. Maybe they're feeling sick, but they still want to keep on top of things. So maybe like somehow incorporating that option for them.
So if we ever get back into IPAC, then maybe we can designate one of the mentors there to be on the computer.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
So the last question is, what are some of the changes you think we should keep after COVID? What should think that we think we should keep?
Some,
So I agree with actually a couple things people have already started mentioning. Like office hours, I think definitely have an in-person option like ALAC. But I think it would be really useful to have some kind of online option still. Because like sometimes availability is difficult to actually get there. Like if they only have a short like time window, it's way easier to just log on from wherever you are, just ask a question or two. I think it'll increase the amount of people who go to office hours. You know, so like they don't have to walk all the way down to ALAB even if it's not that far. So I think that would be really useful. I think lecture mentoring, even though I wasn't a lecture mentor, it seemed I had biology with a lecture mentor in person, like before COVID. And even though they were there, it was kind of hard to ask them questions during class because we're all kind of just sitting in a huge lecture hall. So I'm not sure if there can still be some kind of like online lecture mentor, like if the classes, like if you can be logged on to something during class, even if you're sitting there in person to ask questions or some kind of setup like that. I think that would be interesting, you know, because it's kind of, you don't want to interrupt your professors. You don't want to raise your hand in this huge lecture hall, but then how do you get your questions answered on the spot? So I don't know if we could set something up like that.
We did that, right, Molly? You remember in the spring? We actually had the mentors sitting in the bottom of the lecture hall, but online answering questions through either media site or Adobe Connect.
It was through the media site in the spring. But like what I was gonna say, like I think we should keep is like especially like I feel like having WebEx Teams is just like such an easy way to communicate with professors, and like instead of having to send an email for a quick simple question that a lot of people have, like having those big group chats is useful for that. And I think that could also be useful like with the lecture mentoring. So like if there is the big WebEx Teams, they could send messages.
I would like to thank everyone for your feedback and support of the program. I look forward to implement some of these new ideas when we get back to our in-person mentor program in the very near future. Thank you again.